Back with the WMAY morning news feed. I'm Greg Bishop and tell you the anatomy of a story. We talked about this this week with the Springfield School Board on Monday meeting and ultimately having their broadcasts on the local cable, on YouTube even, but they announced that they're no longer going to be allowing public comments on the YouTube video. This, of course, was kind of recognized a few weeks ago by a district parent who gave comments to the school board back in June, and those comments were stripped from YouTube. The entire video was taken down from YouTube. So you had the Springfield School Board meet on Monday, and they, of course, were debating a pretty controversial issue of whether or not to send a resolution to the Illinois State Board of Education on to recommend adding COVID-19 vaccines to the list of vaccines required for students to be in school. And this has a lot of people, wanting to talk about their concerns over it. So obviously public comments are integral to any kind of public taxing body. So ultimately you had the public comments did happen physically at the meeting, but the YouTube video, for anybody that wanted to go back and try to see the archived comments, at least on YouTube, weren't there. Here is board president Anthony Mares talking about their new policy announced on Monday.
We also desire that the public business we conduct at board meetings be widely available through YouTube. Therefore, we will no longer include public comment in our YouTube meeting videos so that public business is available to district families.
So I reached out to YouTube yesterday and asked somebody, wasn't sure, it was just a press at Google, whatever, and emailed and said, hey, District 186 in Springfield says that their video was taken down, presumably because of public comments going against whatever COVID-19 science guidance YouTube has spelled out in their terms and conditions. And somebody did get back to me from Google and said that they would try to get me something. But as I'm putting this story together, I'm trying to find out, I've got deadlines. I've got to get this content out to affiliates. I've got to get the content ready for radio stations across the state. So I had a deadline, and the deadline was not met. So ultimately, I put out a story about how YouTube, school district says YouTube took down a video because of public comments. We also got comment from a parent who was censored by YouTube. Ryan Jugan, he shared with me comments that as a parent and a concerned citizen, witnessing censorship, suppression of medical professionals, science, and data is appalling. I also connected with State Representative Chris Miller. He filed a bill last week that would ultimately allow for citizens in Illinois to sue social media companies that censor their speech. So here's a bit of the conversation I had with Republican State Representative Chris Miller yesterday morning about this issue of censorship from social media.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to thank you, Greg, for having me on the greatest morning talk show that it's ever happened here in the state of Illinois, so I appreciate that. But I do think that the issue of freedom of speech is one of the fundamental pillars of a free society. And once you start limiting freedom of speech, the spiral downwards, when we're only allowing one opinion, one worldview, one way of looking at life, one of the things that makes America is freedom of speech and the free back and forth of ideas to come to the best decision.
So his bill, of course, is filed, and it's not been advanced to any committee. What exactly is the future of this bill? I asked Representative Miller that very question.
Well, one of the one of the things I know about House Bill 4145 is that most likely it will go to rules to die because nobody wants to talk about the elephant in the room. And, and I think that it's important to remember, just as free thinking Americans, that all information is biased depending on your worldview. And I will unashamedly admit that my worldview leans towards individual liberty, limited government, rule of law, and free trade, and et cetera. And so all those things shape the way that I look at this world. And when I look at what's happened to freedom of speech in America, where you're only permitted to have one view, and that's typically the radical left viewpoint is the only viewpoint that's acceptable. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that. But when all of the radical terrorists have access to carte blanche to social media, and they censure the president of the free world, that's a real problem as far as the free exchange of ideas. And one of the reasons why that America is in such a mess is because journalism is dead in America, and the media has become nothing but a radical propaganda machine for the radical left and their ideals.
So again, sharing a conversation I had with State Representative Chris Miller about a bill he filed at the State House that would allow Illinois residents to sue social media companies for censorship. And I laid out for him what happened with the Springfield District 186 School Board and YouTube videos apparently being taken down because of presumably public comments that were critical of COVID-19 guidance. Here's some of what he says his bill ultimately aims to do.
Well, I think that one of the things that it does, at least philosophically, would be to give the people that are being censored an avenue of restitution or a way to push back against what's happening with freedom of speech here in Illinois and actually in America.
And about YouTube censoring public comments on a public taxing body's YouTube channel?
This bill would give the just regular citizens a way to push back. Even with what you were the introductory thought about YouTube censoring the school districts and the responses to the school board meetings, this would be an example where they would actually have a vehicle that they could push back against the censorship of their thoughts.
Again, that's State Representative Chris Miller talking about his bill and how it could be used if it's ever brought up in committee and sent to the House floor and approved by the Senate and then signed by the governor. So you can see it's got quite a few hurdles, and he has no illusions it's going to go anywhere. But ultimately, he says that it's important to have open dialogue. It's important to hear all voices. And individuals should be allowed to have their voices heard on social media platforms. Now, his bill does give some exemptions. For instance, you can't openly call for violence. You can't, openly call for criminal activity. And you can't bully minors and things along those lines. But ultimately, he says that his bill would allow for individuals to sue social media companies for censoring their political or religious speech. And there's a line in there, too, about presumed hate speech or alleged hate speech, how, the social media companies can't just use that element, saying, well, we don't allow hate speech, so this individual can't talk. I asked Representative Miller about that particular provision in his bill.
Well, the thing that they want to do is anytime you disagree with them, you automatically are using hate speech to disagree with them. It's just like if I said Jesus Christ is Lord, that would be hate speech, or any fundamental Christian values or anything like that. They just automatically refer that as hate speech. If you say Donald Trump was a great president, that's hate speech. Any dissenting comment that they don't like, they just qualify it under hate speech, and that's a problem when it comes to the free exchange of ideas.
So again, that's State Representative Chris Miller talking about his bill that would allow for citizens to sue YouTube or other social media companies for censoring their speech. So I put the story together, and the lead of the story was, an Illinois school district said YouTube censored videos, and, goes through everything I just laid out for you, right? Some of the comments from a parent who was censored, the school board talking about how they're not going to allow for public comments on the YouTube video anymore so that people can actually have access to regular school board business remotely. And a variety of other comments from Representative Miller. And I didn't hear back from YouTube until 30 minutes after my deadline and the story was published. So we had to change the headline, because the headline was, school district says YouTube censoring their videos. So we had to change the headline to essentially say, YouTube yanks school district video over public comments, later restores it. Because YouTube did get back and said, upon further review, we're reinstating the school board's video. Spokesperson for YouTube said, we have policies in place to allow content that might otherwise violate our COVID-19 misinformation policies, as long as it includes educational, documentary, scientific, or artistic context. So the video's been restored. I later, and this wasn't included in the story, definitely for a follow-up, but later reached out to the school board and asked if they're aware of that, and they said YouTube had not communicated with them about the video being restored, but that June 21st video that apparently was taken down because of public comments is back up. And the school board didn't get notification from YouTube that they put it back up. And this is after the school board said that they had initially appealed YouTube's decision to take down the video and were denied. So interesting to see with, somebody from the media just asking a few questions, all of a sudden prompts a review of it, and then they restore the video. So fascinating to see how this censorship can play out and how we do have to be vigilant in asking questions and following up on these things. We'll see where this goes from here, and whether or not it's still an unanswered question to the Springfield School District if now after this story and after YouTube says, hey, we're going to allow comments if it's part of an educational type of thing. Will the Springfield School District allow for the public comment section on their YouTube videos that they upload? And another question is, maybe this is for you out there, should public bodies just get away from using social media or being too reliant on private social media companies to get the word out to their taxpaying constituents? It's an interesting question. I think when we see all this different types of censorship happening, even hitting taxing bodies, maybe it's one that we should postulate. All right, it is now 6:51. I'm Greg Bishop. Thank you so much for hanging out.